friends, welcome to episode 139 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I'm Sarah.
I'm Rob.
How we doing, Rob?
Okay, I think.
Yeah.
Little brain drained and managing, but
You know, this is supposed to be a week off for both of us, and I don't think it's turning out that way for
kind of and kind of not. I mean, I had some successes and some failures, but all learning experiences.
Yeah. So tonight is our year-end wrap-up. Hopefully it's going to be a nice, relaxing show for us. We don't really even have like much of an itinerary for the show.
Our script is very light.
It's going to be this isn't really a teach a lesson sort of show. This is just us kind of taking a moment to look back on the previous year.
Yeah.
Look back on our own campaigns.
Yeah. That's a thing.
Look back on the complications, of course, that the world has handed us and such like that, and then also kind of taking a look forward into 2022.
Yeah. Hopefully the better part of it.
Hopefully the better part of it. But
yeah. The year has been interesting, to say the least. On so many levels. Like, I will say that every system spotlight that we've done, I found something.
Yeah.
That, in a way that I didn't ever imagine. I'm going to literally have to go back through the list a little bit to remember some of them. But definitely things that sparked curiosity enough to say, is this something that I could steal and use, even in other game systems that didn't, more so in a story way and less in a mechanics way.
Well, not even talking about stealing things from other game systems, but like, can you think of a system spotlight that we did in the last year that like you looked at and went, oh wow, I absolutely need to do this. Like we should run this game sometime,
Cypher.
Okay, yeah,
So,
the Cypher system. We did a system spotlight on Numenera that uses the Cypher system.
Cypher inspired me as a mechanical system. I thought it was neat. It was different, and it was different enough that it was like, that could be something I'd be interested in running.
Yeah, I could see it.
Even in different settings than Numenera.
Sure.
Because I felt that it could be extracted very clean.
I really liked the Cypher system. I mean, I almost felt like Numenera was a little much.
No, I agree. I mean, again, it's picking the right group for that and the right story for it, but I thought it was a neat system.
But the Cypher system I thought was great.
Yeah.
I think for me, Legend of the Five Rings.
Yeah, you really thought that was epic.
Really glommed onto that one.
And
really still hoping that one of our friends is able to pick that up and run it.
God,
for
I hope
us,
so.
Man, I've still got a character concept in my back pocket that I just really want to play.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there, but there has to be a story that follows it, because it is it's so embedded in the theme and feel that it's kind of hard to try. Kind of like, I mean, Cyberpunk as a whole has that same edge where it's hard to extract it, but it's a neat system. It's a really neat system that feels that the weight of strengths that it has for the genre that it's worked to develop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I really like I think that the big thing that grabs me about that was its departure from traditional attributes.
Yeah.
Where you just have rings, earth, air, fire, water, void.
Yeah.
And these are they're more concepts, and you discuss your approach to solving a thing, and that determines what ring you're going to use.
Right.
It's and that is something I have not seen any other game system since. Maybe Fate comes close to it in rough concept, but I mean that was a completely new thing for me, and I love it so much.
Yeah.
Because it stops you from thinking about, like, am I playing a brutishly strong character? Like, it doesn't matter. Small characters with the right application of, of focus and key, or even just leverage, can accomplish great things, in ways that isn't so cut and dry of, like, you're strong, therefore you can lift the thing,
Yeah. I mean, and I think I had a lot of the same feeling doing, strangely enough, Call of Cthulhu and Alien back-to-back. like month after month, because for me, I looked at those systems and saw that it was taking what you would think would be a very tactical, and putting it on its head by adding a single stress kind of component to them. And that changes the game in a way that, like, it puts hit points on its head.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Just as something as simple as that, because it adds a weight to the system, and it's an important weight to the system that's always there. And it's odd, and there's a couple analogies that I could think of for it, but it's that whole concept that when you have an anchor and it's deployed, that's changing the entire mechanic of whatever you're doing. It puts a spin on it in a way that you won't expect, but you cannot deny that it's there. And I think those kinds of things in some of the systems that we found, those anchor points, make a huge difference. And that's really, I mean, going through all the systems in my head that we went through, seeing those anchors, that thing that changes the dynamic of power in just a single maneuver, or a single point change or adjustment where your stress goes up. It affects everything.
And I think the reason I liked it was because so many of these role-playing games, like you take a long rest or something, or the equivalent thereof, and it erases any lasting damage.
It erases the anchor.
You can be damn near dead, and then the moment you stop and be like, oh, I drink a health potion or something, wham, you're good to go again. The sanity mechanic in Call of Cthulhu represented to me a slow deterioration. But even in that deterioration, it's more of a transformation, because, like, having low sanity can do good things for you. You know, there are mechanical benefits you get by being jaded to the horrors out there, or having so much insight into these things that lie beyond the veil of what human nature knows, that you can then manipulate the world in strange and interesting ways with, like, magic and such.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at, we didn't get into, like, World of Darkness, but we touched upon humanity as being something like that. In the
that's another good slow deterioration mechanic.
Powered by the Apocalypse actually does that with your own progression. In City of Mist, or not City of Mist, Urban
Shadows?
Urban Shadows. What does that say? I flip my brain back and forth. Your character's progression eventually pushes them in a direction. In one case, you become closer to either your given power set, if you will, your godlikeness, or your fableness.
Oh no, that's City of Mist.
That's City of Mist. I'm sorry.
Your mythos, or your
Avatar? No,
not Avatar. I know what you're talking about, though. Yeah,
but it's you slide one way or the other way.
Are you more human, or are you more mythos?
Right, and I think that's a beautiful mechanic that, again, is an anchor point. That shifts you one way or the other. City of Mist has a scale where you basically become effectively more of the monster that you are, whether you're becoming more of a poltergeist, or you're becoming more of a mage, or whatever, and eventually lose control. Like, you're progressing along, but it's like the humanity scale. And I think those anchor points that are a progression are unique.
Those are the
to
things,
change things.
Yeah, I think those are the things that have made these system spotlights really interesting for us. Because, I mean, there's only so many ways you can do, like, okay, here's your attributes, here's your skills, you roll these dice to, attribute plus skill plus some dice to hit a target number.
Right.
Okay, I mean, like, every game system does that, but how does the game system introduce that one unique thing, that anchor point that says, okay, but this is what we do. This is the cost. This is the cost for it, or this is the thing that makes our system unique and feel different from all the others.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see D&D add, like, an injury mechanic. Like, oh, so you've taken, you've gone down to 0 hit points. You automatically get an injury that represents a negative on your constitution, or a negative on your strength, or a negative on your dex.
I feel like the DM's Guide has rules for that.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure there are some, like, gritty realism rules and stuff like that in
but
there.
It's not an anchor of the system.
Yeah.
Hit points is the anchor of the system, but they've already negated it.
I almost feel like it wouldn't be D&D if you did that though. And because I think like as much as I complain about it, because it's not the type of story I want to play, is a story without consequences.
Right.
But I think, to me though, that kind of is the heart and soul of D&D. Is just, we're going to go throw caution to the wind, kick down some doors, and fight that red dragon over there for glory and honor and treasure. And we're going to live to tell about it at the end of the day, because there's no consequences in this game. You know, we can have danger. Yeah, certainly, you know, someone can be perma-killed, but like, I don't know that.
Right.
I think if you did start levying some hard consequences, it would change the gameplay mechanic, and it wouldn't feel like D&D anymore.
100% it wouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole thing. But I was just reading in the chat because somebody was talking about mental health potions.
Oh, yeah, health potions that can somehow cure depression. I would love that.
But that goes... Matt was talking, in our Mad Elf was talking that he... it's too close to reality for him.
Yeah.
You know, that it's a little too farther into reality. But I think that's a whole thing, is that when we have anchors like this, we are attaching it to very realistic things. But we're like, I mean, Vampire the Masquerade uses humanity, right? Or what's the Mage the Ascension part? It's not sanity, but it's
there isn't
when you break reality.
When
basically.
you break reality, it's quietus.
Yes, quietus. That's it. But again, it's a very ethereal kind of concept.
Yeah.
Right.
Where you lose grips because you can change reality. You lose grips on what reality actually should be.
Yeah. 7th Sea used reputation as a way of you, like, you're losing reputation. You're becoming negative, and people are seeing you more villainous than heroic.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great mechanical edge that probably when I move things to Savage Seas, I'm going to carry that mechanic of reputation going up and going down.
God, every time you say Savage Seas, I get just a thrill. Just a thrill runs down my spine. I'm so looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to have a weight when I get around to it. And hopefully I can do a little more than outside of the podcast with it, and we can talk a bit more about it.
I want to change things up a little, because I do want to talk about the impact that Savage Worlds has had on our relative gaming group. But
huge.
But real quick though, we brought up the live chat a couple times. So tonight we pulled the Patreon only restriction off the live chat.
Yep.
I'll open it up to anybody who wants to join in. So we do actually have a bunch of people in our live chat right now. Just want to give a quick shout out to Knox in the Box here as always. Overwatch. Joining us as non-Patreons, we've got the Mad Elf and Avendasora. Yep. Good to see both of you as well. I'm pretty sure if I prod him a little bit, Heatsink, that's Sean, is also out there in the live chat. So thank you all for joining us, and we appreciate having you all with us and shooting us some questions. I did see that Knox was asking if we have reached any of our storytelling goals for this year, and I think we're going to table that one for a little bit later. I think it's a very great question. Oh, Claus is also with us.
Hey, Claus. I think storytelling as a whole this year has changed because of your larger discovery of Savage Worlds, like at the end of last year.
Yeah.
And your deeper exploration of this year, and just some of the stuff that came along with that with the group. But I think one of the biggest things is we've watched our players change as well.
Yeah.
And had to adapt to some of those changes, not negative, just different growth points and changes in their lives, and what COVID has done. You know, just, and I use that as a general term of like where it's put us in energy levels and communication, and even trying to negotiate being around people and things like that.
Yeah.
This year has been different than last year.
I think there was a tipping point, like kind of right after the pandemic started and we all started gaming online, that we kind of realized that we were overextending ourselves from like a physical gaming standpoint. Like 8-hour sessions with a dinner break in the middle of them were just too long. Like, people were getting burnt out by the end of that. And I think we both realized we needed to trim, like, an hour or two. We weren't...
I almost feel obligated to say your mom's too long, but at the same point, you're right. Like, I can't. But no, you're right. It would be too long for your mother as well. No, like, it's funny. It's like the whole LAN party thing. Like,
Yeah.
it's great for your 20s, but once you get over a certain age, you want to kind of nap.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
bit much. Like, I can sit down and play games, but, like, at a certain point, even my butt hurts.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
like, yeah, swamp ass is a thing. But, like, but we've learned more about, like, the conditions of our players that they are not even aware of in some cases.
Yeah.
And I say conditions, I mean in a very general term. Like, players who have a hard time sitting around, who have challenges with their daily life that then pushed in physical ailments. We're getting older. Let's just be honest.
We are.
And all of those things come into our group and weigh a certain level with our storytelling. And things have changed because of that. I don't think for the worse at all. I think the adaptation was necessary and helped. But at certain points, it was inspiring. At certain points, it was straight up depressing.
Yeah.
I'll flat out say that. But I will also say that having a weekly Wednesday therapy session that talks about D&D does help, especially in the long run between September and now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Because, like, I could have felt at any time that if we didn't have this, you would have possibly stopped storytelling.
I have to admit, it's...
Hey, Agami joined us, by the way.
Hey, Agami. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
I got to admit, like, it was touch and go for a minute there in the middle of, like, November, where I was just like... I swear to God, like, when my game in the first week of December got canceled again, and I'm like, this is nobody's fault, but, like, come on, you know? And even, like, earlier this week, I was saying to Sean, I was like, all right, so what are your predictions on how my game is going to get canceled this time? I think I know what my prediction is. We're going to get a foot of snow on Saturday.
Yeah, but we live in Michigan, so that's not a big thing. It's going to have to be closer to 2.
Right, but that's going to preclude Steve from being here.
Yeah.
It may preclude one or two of our other players from being like, I can't get out of my driveway.
Yeah.
Matt Elf has a bit of a drive ahead of him.
True.
Almost as far as Steve does. So
arguably, you could put it in there.
So I mean, I couldn't blame anybody if they said I'm not going to navigate a foot of snow to come out there for a couple hours from an hour away. I can't argue with that. That's true, but. It's the pessimistic part of my mind is already going, it's been 3 months, of course it's going to get canceled a 4th month in a row. So
yeah, I mean, my game's tomorrow. Your game's on Saturday. At least we give them a break in between.
Yeah.
I'm hoping, because mine's the end of my this is the end of this
major chapter,
major chapter, not in continuation of the act. And I came into it a little troubled. Like, I didn't know, and we had a quick discussion at the end of last show, and it just went literally light bulb instantaneously.
I really appreciate that we have that with each other, where it's like, I know you play in my game, and I don't want to tip my hand story-wise, but I also know that you won't meta it in a way that, if I do tip the story a little bit to you, that you're not going to... You're there for the experience of the ride, rather than the twists and turns of it.
Exactly. And it's... I always love that about your stories. Also, kind of when it comes to certain things, I have the mind of a goldfish. Like, I have so much going on that, like, I'll have a discussion with you, and then I will kind of forget about it. Yeah. And then when we sit down and we start playing, we'll be like, this is what she was talking about. Oh, okay, I got this.
Or even sometimes I'll come after you after the game, like, that was the thing that I was talking about. You were like, we talked about this? Like, hey, all right.
But that's the thing is that I try to let go of it very quickly, because I sit down with a different hat on. And I'm able to have those discussions with you, and I think that's really cool. I think it is really cool that we have that dynamic, and that's a cool thing. I mean, one of the things I even brought up was I think we should dual piano a game, of some system.
That's kind of part of our going into 2022 discussion of like what we've got planned for the future. But I think something like that could be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, all right, because we've got I'm going to say we have a decent array of individuals in our live chat. I'm going to throw out a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you would our listeners like us maybe in the main podcast, maybe as a side thing, to go through and go from some base concept all the way through to maybe even first or second adventure of a game, where Sarah and I literally co-DM a story, and we bring you through with us through figuring out what we're going to do, getting the inspiration, coming up with a concept, developing that into a campaign, selling that campaign to players, maybe even doing a session 0 in character creation, as well as discussing what happens in that first session, that first actual adventure.
Yeah.
And going through that with you guys and breaking it down in maybe, little hour chunks and going through it.
And for those of you who are not in the live chat and are listening to this as a recorded podcast later on, by all means, hit us up.
Tweet us, hit us on the Discord.
Hit us on the Discord. Tweet at us at st_conclave. Can we even give them the email address if they've got opinions they want to send in, or is that something we want to keep?
I would say if they could hit us up, however. They could DM us directly if they have things that they want to personally. But I would say definitely hit our Discord up.
Yeah, by one way or another, though, you've got a couple of different avenues. We would love to hear from you on as far as suggestions you want for next year. And, if you're interested in hearing, it would be obviously a big shift in format for us.
I don't think it would change our main podcast, but I think we might put it out as extra episodes or like a breakdown where we're actually okay, so today we're going to go over where our inspiration and what kind of development, and it'll just be kind of a general discussion between Sarah and I, and then going through our concept and how we're putting it together and things like that.
Yeah.
So I don't think it would be, and I don't think we would ever do the show, unless this becomes interesting, people get interested and they want to actually hear the game and do it as a podcast. I don't think we'd get into that, but I think we take it from a development aspect and talk through how we're developing it and how things are going forward. We can definitely do that. So if you guys, I'm seeing some interest here in that. So
definitely a lot of interest, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe we'll put that down on the definite maybe list because clearly there's interest in it. And we always want to know what you guys want to see more of or listen to more of. There we go. We've got a couple other ideas in the can that we're kind of kicking around, one of which is trying to get some of the podcast up on YouTube, so we can get audience there as well, although neither of us really want to do cameras.
We're both really camera shy. But
and I don't want to get dressed.
there's almost like face recognition apps that will put an animated avatar out there for you.
And we can come up with something. And I've got some of that. We may do a test bed and throw it at the Discord and see what sticks. If it's something you guys, even if it looks decent to us before it even gets there. So we were looking up. Tonight was another brainstorming show for the new year.
Yeah,
and we've been coming up with show ideas. We would love to hear some general show ideas that you guys might be interested in, even if you guys can spitball some stuff at us, that things that you might want to hear about, or us to revisit, even.
Especially if there's a system out there that's kind of caught your eye, you want us to system spotlight it.
Yeah.
By all means, suggest those. The second Wednesday of every month is always our system spotlight.
We've got a couple coming up where we are going to try and do some more co-hosted shows or have guests on. We're going to try and dig some more of those up. We're a little more comfortable with the virtualization and getting that set up. And Seth was great. We're going to try and get Seth back. So he was wonderful. But we definitely want to try and get some more ideas in. So we're gonna peg up our marketing department and see if they can help us with that a little bit.
Knox is asking in live chat, have you done an episode on building arcs?
And story arcs?
That is 100%. So next year, one of the things we were discussing over dinner is, in our plans for next year, is, so second Wednesday of the month is always our system spotlights.
I think we're going to keep that.
And so I was talking maybe first Wednesday of the month is going to be our 101 series.
Where
we're going to get back to talking a lot less about high concept stuff and more talking about okay, this is your first time storytelling. How do you do the basic stuff? And building arcs is definitely on that list.
Yeah.
How to string plots together from ideas of things you think should happen and make them happen in real life without railroading, but without also allowing them to be completely missed by your players.
Yep. Like all of those pieces. I think we will be doing an episode on building arcs and stepping from one to the next.
Yeah.
Because it's a challenging topic. It's something we've had to learn. Definitely.
It is. There's a lot of trial and error in there.
Oh God, yeah. And I mean, none of us, even the master's degree people who write stories all the time, have to go back to the basics and look at like, what did I miss?
Yeah. There are professionals who get paid a lot of money who still mess this step up. So.
Yeah, and so coming back to those and like, okay, what can I do with this section to get it back to feel like a story is a huge part of that. Just you get an idea for an adventure, but an adventure is not a story. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference there is like sometimes you look at stories out of a box, like an adventure, a pre-gen, and you look at it and you're like, okay, this is great on paper, but like my players are not going to be interested in this in any way. Like there's no hook for their characters to fit into this. And if they give you a hook, sometimes that hook feels forced. Mm-hmm. And then there's no encouragement to continue. So sometimes that linchpinning can be very hard. Other times you look at a story and its hooks are very good. They're very open and broad and give you better ideas to engage your players with it. And I think that's going to be a huge part of trying to figure out how to make adventure story and make stories more adventurous.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly, yeah. There's a lot of times where like I've looked at my character and gone like, why is my character even here? Like, is there literally anything keeping me here other than I'm polite to the DM and don't want to, walk away from their table?
Yeah. Evan's Door, I will have to ask, are you saying we're not animate? Like, we're not animated enough? Is that the problem? We need a filter to animate us?
Yes.
No, I can see where she's going with it, but at the same time, I'm like, should I be offended? Like,
no, because that was me all afternoon. Like,
tis true. But yeah,
one thing I wanted an idea. You and I have talked about it a lot. We've talked about it with our with Samantha as well. About doing campaign diaries.
Yes,
and that idea has constantly come up, and neither of us has pulled the trigger and just executed it.
Every time I come to it, it feels like a daunting thing to try and go back.
Well, see, and I'm having that same problem too. So, and that's one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to throw it out there. I've kind of avoided talking about them because I don't want to commit to anything. Mm-hmm. But I think I'm at the point where, like, even if it's just me, like, I'm not going to speak for you, but I think I want to throw it out there and say, like, do you guys want to hear about my thought process on my own campaign, how that's going, what curveballs I've had, what my inspirations for building it are, how things have gone, the reasons I've put certain things together. I know you're not sitting at my table, so a lot of this is out of context, but at least kind of seeing behind my screen on how I'm putting things into practice in my own game. Is that something that you think would be helpful to you? Because it was something we had an idea as far as like being Patreon content. Not a mainstream podcast, but going out to our Patreons at maybe like the $5 and above level. And if so, especially since we do have a couple non-Patreons in the live chat right now, is that something that you think you would find value in? Would that entice you to join our Patreon if you were getting that extra content?
Yeah, because we've always tried to figure that out and see where the investment versus, the return on it. And I'm not even saying financially. I'm saying, like, would people even listen to it? I mean, we're already amazed enough that we get people listening to this.
Right.
Like, it surprises us that there are people around the world who listen to us.
We were like, hey, guys, show up, and you did?
Don't get me wrong. Like, I would love to have more international people in our channels and hear what, in our Discord or tweeting us or sending us, emails to let us know you're out there and that you like our content. But to just give us, like, what you want to hear more of is a huge piece for us, because we will produce content if there's somebody out there that really is interested in it. I mean,
absolutely.
We would love to do that. It's not that we're running out of ideas. Believe me, we sat down and we can still spitball, another 15 to 20 shows. We did it.
Yeah.
In a few minutes, or I would say a better part of an hour. But, like, at the same time, we really don't know where the interest is. We think we have a pulse level at a certain point, but there's a lot of people we're just not hearing from.
Yeah, it's a combination of there's very limited feedback from our listeners, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe what we're doing is just nice, and you guys are content, and you don't feel the need to pipe up because silent customers are happy customers, you know?
Yeah.
So the squeaky wheel gets the oil, as they say.
That's usually how it goes. The less than 10% of your listeners who bitch at you get the most noise.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And you know, not all of you are people who want to necessarily hop in and engage in discussions. You just want to listen to your podcast, and that's fine.
No,
that's the level of it. That's absolutely a valid level of engagement. It's the level of engagement I have with all the podcasts I listen to. Yeah. I don't think I'm on anybody else's Discord as much as I encourage people getting on mine.
I'm on a few of them, but like. And I like a few of them have sent out surveys, which I'm thinking we might do, especially with our Patreon levels. I saw some of the stuff that was working out for them on that, and so we may end up doing that for our Patreon members to get a little bit more of a shift there. But yeah, we are always interested. Like we would like to produce more content.
But I think the other part of it, and this is a little peek behind the curtain here, is I think we both suck at marketing ourselves.
Oh, 100%.
Like we hired an external marketing person because we were both like the idea of like, how do we get ourselves out there? How do we tell people that we're awesome and they should listen to us?
Yeah, because I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I barely tell my friends and family about this.
Yeah.
They have to ask me.
Sarah can't take a compliment, you know, over here is going to really do a big marketing push to try to get a bunch of people to listen to her. That's not going to happen. So it's valuable for us to hear back from our listeners, whether you're a Patreon or not, to let us know what you'd like to see out of the show.
Yeah.
What you would like to see out of your Patreon subscription.
Yeah.
And what we can do that would help enrich your experience as a storyteller, what you would find valuable, what you think would improve your storytelling, and how we can share that with you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Just to kind of go back, because it hit my brain in a weird way, is that I sometimes fear that if I did campaign diaries, I'd end up doing a Bo Burnham kind of, this isn't what I, people listening like, this isn't what I expected. This is a little bit too introspective on Rob.
But you know what? Okay, maybe that's okay. Like, if you don't mind getting a little parasocial, I guess I don't. But I'm also that no filter person who will just like tell you all about my trauma, after the second time I've met you, so.
Yeah. I think that's where my trouble would come into it. But at the same time, like if someone's interested in listening about it, I can tell you about my campaign and like the struggles that I hit, because I do hit quite a few, but I can also tell you about the most inspiring moments that I've had in the past few months that have been pretty amazing, for where my campaign in my own mind has gone to, and what I've had to learn and relearn again and again. And habits are hard to break. I will flat out say that one of the hardest things as a storyteller is breaking bad habits.
Yeah.
Because they will haunt you in ways that you don't notice until it happens. Over planning is a huge problem that I have. I will over plan a scenario, and I've always had to scale that back, and every time I've scaled it back, I get to a successful point, and then I go too far back. And suddenly it doesn't feel like it was thought out enough. And I don't know if it's good or bad. And sometimes I get a little bit of feedback, and I'm like, ooh, that went too far back. Like, it didn't feel complete. So yeah, I think that's a whole thing that like if I could impress upon new storytellers of what I've learned in the last year is don't get bad habits, but I can't, because you're gonna get them.
Yeah.
It's just gonna happen.
Yeah.
You're gonna learn a bad habit because you think it's successful, and no one's gonna tell you it's a bad habit until you recognize it yourself. Or you'll very rarely get somebody as candid as you, as a fellow storyteller, that's like, you've gone way too far. Like, scale that crap back, Rob. Like, we don't. You don't need to write about something that we've never seen or are going to see anything about. You've gone way too far in this world building and attached it to the story. You can do world building, just don't attach it to the story.
Yeah.
It's not that important. Like, you know more about Wheel of Time's universe than I do, and so when I'm watching Wheel of Time, there's part of it that I'm hearing in my head as you, and I'm looking for these things that have nothing to do with the story, right? That's in my face.
Yeah.
Because they're not important. I feel sometimes the same way about the whole Tamriel campaign, is that there's so much of what's going on in just the Elder Scrolls universe that has nothing to do with this game and the story. And my brain goes, I has to forget it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and luckily I enjoyed Skyrim and I know quite a bit about it, and I've played Elder Scrolls Online, so I understand these worlds pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I can let those things slip out of my brain to just enjoy your story.
Yeah.
So.
And I've tried my best not to mire everything in, 4 hours worth of lore dumps.
Right.
Where it's just like, yeah, there's this thing here. Well, what importance does it have? I don't know. It's because it's always been here because Cyrodiil was built on top of an old, ancient elven empire.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but what's the significance? It's an ancient elven ruin. That's it. That's the significance. Nobody even knows anymore. Like, put it out of your mind. It's if you really want to dig and you really want to like try to come up with, okay, well, what does all of this mean? That's cool, and I will admire your efforts and I will reward them because I know.
Right.
But yeah, for me, it's not that deep of just I my goal is to put something in front of you guys that you can all digest, and at the end of the day, if you can look at me and go, oh yeah, I saw where your plot was going.
Right.
I think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because that means you understand it.
Right.
I've talked a lot about spoiler culture.
Yeah.
And how, the gotcha, the twist has become the en vogue thing to do in storytelling.
Oh, what the twist?
Well, largely because of, like, Marvel and stuff like that, Like, the popularity of them. Like, have you heard some of the crap that Marvel pulls to, like they will give main actors the scripts like 3 pages at a time with like half of it redacted.
Mm-hmm.
But,
well, I mean, the only person who knew in Harry Potter what was going on with Snape was him as an actor, because he needed to know his motivations. Everyone else had no clue. Yeah. Because they just didn't get the rest of the stories.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that sort of need for secrecy that I think I'm not even going to say has bled into tabletop role playing game because it's always been there.
Mm-hmm.
The whole concept of being behind the DM screen and hiding everything from from your players, hiding your rolls, fudging your rolls so that you can get the outcome that you want. Why are you even rolling the dice? Yeah. And for me, it's never been about the gotcha. I think I have a tough time following complex plots. Like.
Some of my plots. You can flat out say it.
Well, I mean, look, I'll be straight up with you. I was watching the season 2 of The Witcher that just recently came out, and I cannot tell you half of what's going on.
It's just too intense.
Look, I can tell you what's going on with the whole plot with Ciri.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you most of what Yennefer's plot is all about.
Sure.
I cannot tell you what the hell is going on between Nilfgaard and the Northern Kingdoms and stuff like that.
Right.
And the elves are now involved, and it's like, I don't, like, that Game of Thrones level of politics is just something, for some stupid reason, my brain does not process. And so that's why I keep trying to impress upon you. I'm like, it's not personal. It's not your story. It's not you.
Right.
It's, you tell a particular style of story with a lot of complex twists and turns and high-level movement to it, and my brain doesn't grasp that. Whether it's you or whether it's something wonderful like The Witcher, it's like I can't hang on to that in my brain. And so when I sit down at the table, I love presenting a plot that can be followed. That when my players go, oh yeah, I saw that coming a mile away, but that was one of the greatest game sessions I've ever sat at. Like, to me, that's a win-win right there,
True.
That you were following enough that you saw it coming.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Overwatch paints it pretty clearly what the Witcher story is.
Everyone is arseholes. Yes.
Yes, it's true. That's usually the case when it goes to that far into it. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, I from a storyteller's perspective and listening to you as a player, I listen to how deeply you get into the lore of things. And it makes me go, you want that. Like, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you wanted it for Elder Scrolls Online, and you wanted it for Wheel of Time, and you wanted it for the other things. But when it gets handed to you in role playing, you don't. It's not as you can't ingest it at the same level.
I think the problem is that I have trouble ingesting it as a in the way it's being related to me. Okay. And I think it's probably the same problem at your table that is the same problem I have with The Witcher, is that I can't see that level of stuff happening. I can hear about Nilfgaard doing stuff and the Northern Kingdoms doing stuff. I can hear from you telling me verbally that the Orc Kingdoms did this and the Gnome Kingdoms did this and then the Human Kingdoms did this because the Gnome Kingdoms did this and then the Orc Kingdoms and I'm like, I can't process that.
Right.
The way that it's being related to me.
Yeah.
I have trouble. Like, but if you showed me a map, I'd be like, oh, yeah, I got all this. Cool. Show me a map with arrows, and I'll relay the entire battle back to you over again. But if you describe it to me, I'm not going to absorb any of it.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And that's why I can tell you all the Ciri stuff in The Witcher, because I watched it happen.
Right.
It happens on screen, but all the high-level political maneuvers are happening because one character is like, oh yeah, Nilfgaard is doing this. Well, whoop-de-doo for them. Like,
yeah.
Okay.
It's all about presentation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all about show me, don't tell me.
Yep. No, that's it. But I think that's something that we're still learning after all of these years and all of these people we played with. We are still learning how to present, and we're forgetting at times how to present that and how to remind ourselves how to present that and who's at our table, and that's part of preparation.
Yeah.
Is making sure that okay, you've got everything ready to go, but do you have it in the presentational format that's actually going to apply to your players? That's not just for you. Like, okay, you're dealing with a tactical scene. Do you have all the components to make the tactical scene work visually? Great. Are they actually going to understand what's going on in the scene?
Yeah. Exactly. For me, it's been about making things bite-sized and personal. And bringing it back down to the individual levels of the player. You know, get out of the meta, get back down to...
Yeah, so like, for tomorrow's game, I grabbed that art piece. What it's was it Art Studio? What was it?
I gotta find it because Draven posted it in the Discord.
I highly recommend it. If you guys need art, just try it. It's easier than you think.
Artflow.ai.
So I jumped on that last night and played around with it for the better part of about 45 minutes.
Real quick, for people who are not on our Discord, Artflow.ai, you type in a sentence,
a textual description,
the character you're looking for, and an AI creates an image that looks like that.
That's unique.
Yeah.
Now, initially I started with, like, swarthy or charming dark elf with devious intention. And it did actually a pretty amazing job on that.
Yeah.
When I started telling it specific descriptions, like white hair, golden eyes, sometimes it wasn't handling that really well. On the other hand, when I said, like, Sean Connery as an orc, it did a pretty amazing job.
Good, actually. I like your Dave Gahan, the lead singer of Depeche Mode, as an elf,
as a dark elf, or Steven Tyler as a dark elf was amazing.
Steven Tyler as a dark elf was so great,
absolutely amazing. I highly recommend you try it. But it does it differently every time you hit generate because again, it's randomly looking at the words and contextualizing them every time, just like each person would do that, and it's grabbing different images when it pulls those. So if you don't get what you're looking for in your first try, hit generate a few times. You're going to get something different.
Knox in the box is saying he tried to make it to make Knox, and it has no idea what to do with the word orc or half orc.
Yeah,
you had a couple that looked really good.
I had orcs that definitely worked out.
Yeah,
I had dark elves that pretty much worked out. They really didn't have enough dark enough skin. But I bet if I would have played with other terms that it could work with, like maybe if I would have said black elf, it might have come up with something different.
Yeah.
But it's not a fully developed heuristic wordplay. It's doing the best it can right now, and they're they're continuing to develop it, and they're going to be expanding upon it. That's clear that there's as there's interest, they're going to keep going with this, and it's eventually going to develop some product will come out of this without a doubt. Someone's going to run with this. Honestly, in my personal opinion, I hope to God they run this into some RPG game, because this could just be an add-on. Where after your character stats get built, it creates a word play and then kicks it to this AI out on the web, and then it comes back with an image and like, boom, there you go. Now you have a character portrait that's 100% random.
I think it's great, and that's something like I'm trying to incorporate a lot more into my game now. Is giving you guys. So I went out and bought little cardstock bookmarks, and I had written like the names and some brief descriptors, and putting a picture of each of my major characters on there. So when someone's in the scene, you can be like, "Who's this guy again?" I can just hand that to you, and you have a visual. That you can associate with these things, and things like this, artbot.ai or whatever it is,
artflow.ai,
and there's a couple more too. If Heatsink is still listening, if Sean's still listening, there's a handful that you have on hand that you were giving to me the other day, that are very much like this. They're not necessarily AI created. Or maybe they are.
I think most of them are AI created,
but a lot of them will just make up like random things depending on who you've got up there. Kind of like character creators in video games.
No, 100%, and I think that's great. But
so having those handy, just to...
but I think that's what you were saying is that for you, it's the format that you're getting handed. So sometimes handing you a sheet with an image and text on it contextually helps you remember.
Oh, 100%.
And attaches it. So that's,
100%.
Again, it's, we all talk about the learning styles of people, whether or not it's, auditory, visual, or tactile. Yes, those are original core ones, but they are not 100% accurate with how someone's going to accept the data. But knowing that you should have a play of the three of those is good. To be able to present it, what's important to your players, and then just not overloading them with information that isn't important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's my biggest takeaway is that I'm going to try and incorporate it more in my game. The other biggest problem is that I'm going to have to send you some prints for tomorrow at some point. So that's where I'm going to have to work a little bit. Like, can you print these off before game for me?
Yeah.
Just so that you have stuff.
Thanks for the heads up. So I'm ready for that. Well, I'm not like, why is he sending this to me?
Yeah, I may send it to you, or I may send it to one of the other players who's closer, so I can get the prints, because they're right down the street.
Oh, okay.
So we'll see where things come from, because I don't have a printer right now, which is kind of weird. This is not an open saying that I need a printer. Believe me, I don't need more hardware in my house at this point in time. So, I think that there was a lot learned, both for Storyteller and for our games over the last year, that really felt good. Like, I feel better going into 2022. I feel better about my next campaign and kind of starting fresh with that. I feel like I need to finish my D&D game as D&D versus changing up. Because part of me at one point was like, maybe I should just move this over to Savage Seas or Savage World. And I was like, no, I'm staying with D&D because my players have reached a point and they're looking for that next step, that next lift.
We've actually already moved game systems once too. You started this game in 3.5.
I did,
and we've moved to 5th edition. So we've already migrated once.
I don't want to try and migrate again without a major movement shift. I mean, honestly, if the end of this campaign ends and you guys want to continue as these characters, I would 100% shift it to another system.
Yeah,
that fits that fits the change in the world. And it'll probably go to more narrative. I'll probably move away from tactical.
Yeah.
And lighten the load on myself, basically, by doing so. Or I'll just immediately move into Savage Seas, which is definitely something I'm super interested in doing.
Oh, yeah.
So...
Absolutely. And Sean's been looking into possibly doing Savage Wheel of Time.
Mad Elf, Savage C&D.
Savage C&D, yes.
That doesn't sound like what I think it sounds like, but we're trying to keep this, children friendly.
PG-13.
Yeah, let's try not to go that far.
We understand that the letter D is just a letter of the alphabet, so with no other deeper context.
Correct.
But yeah, I think like it's interesting to me to see the waves that Savage Worlds has made in our gaming group. Like the introduction of that, and me changing over to from D&D to Savage Worlds and the success, and even just literally, we've only had one game session. We had our session 0, and we had one Savage Worlds game session, and I think that one game session was so good, from a comfort standpoint with the system, regardless of what plot happened. And I think the plot that happened worked very wonderfully with the system itself. But that's just patting myself on my back because it's my game. But I think everybody fell so well into the game system, and it felt so good and so natural that, like Sean instantly is wanting to run, his own Savage Worlds game. He's trying to run Nova Praxis. He's also looking into doing Savage Wheel of Time. You're talking about taking your most beloved system.
I am
7th Sea, and converting that over to Savage Worlds. And I think it's great.
It's not that I don't love 7th Sea. I really do love it, but I want to tell a different story.
Yeah.
In that universe.
But I think you love it. You love it more as the universe, and you want to tell stories in that universe than you are married to the game system behind it.
Yes.
And I think that's great. I think it's great. And I want to take a moment to just, once again, give a big shout out to my entire gaming group.
Yeah.
For being courageous enough to take this leap with me out of our comfort zone of D&D and into a relative unknown of Savage Worlds. Yeah,
and I would say as a DM, you've handled that move really well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it was very comfortable. Like, way more comfortable than most systems. And I think that's an applaud to you for investing in the system and reviewing it and feeling comfortable with it and getting into the nitty-gritty that the players don't have to immediately to try and get to sell it. But I think also just to understand it better than anyone else so that you could be comfortable without playing it, really.
Yeah.
But I think it's also a testament to the system that we've come this far in game systems and that people have done development and redevelopment and discovery and understanding that there's a lot out there to play that some people just don't even know anything about. And so when they go, they pick up, D&D because it's known.
Yeah.
Or they pick up, Warhammer because it's known. Or they pick up, we now have a Dark Souls RPG coming out very soon that I'm interested in seeing how they're going to do that.
Very interesting.
And I know I know the company who's putting it out has already put out previous products that had pretty good success. I'm not very familiar with them.
So Steamforge Games?
I think so.
I think it's Steamforge, yeah.
And they're very good at producing it and putting it on a format that's successful and that players have been eating it up, but I don't know as far as role-playing how successful it's been. I don't have a very valid... So I'm interested now that there are a few in, that they've gone through this development circle, basically, and they're taking a very, very, very well-known product. Dark Souls is exceptionally well-known in multiple areas and has a massive amount of lore wrapped around it. How they're going to bring that to the RPG table and make it accessible and give it enough agency.
That's the big thing for me.
Yeah.
Because it works very well as a linear story.
Solo story.
Yeah, even the multiplayer is not necessarily multiplayer. It's just you just kind of dip into another person's world and help them on their solo story by giving them a buddy.
Correct. And that's my concern is that how are they going to translate a very independent viewed story that has a huge lore about it that is literally exceptionally linearly heroic, right? I mean, you die, you come back, you die, you come back. Death is not the mechanic. We already know the hardest parts of the game are the camera.
The camera's the real boss. Gravity's the real boss.
And learning from failure.
Yeah.
Like those two things do not translate well into RPGs or tabletop RPGs.
They don't.
Roguelike games do exist, but they're not to be played over and over. So I worry that it's going to be small adventure. Like this is actually a board game with some RPG elements.
Yeah, I wonder if it's going to be like that, but I guess we're just got to wait and see.
Yeah.
And see what they do with it. So
yeah, and that's the other thing I was thinking about is a possible future topic is when does a board game become a role-playing game?
Yeah.
Like, what's the actual transition point when you can say, this is now a role-playing game, or that's just a board game?
That'd be a good discussion to have, yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's already a Dark Souls board game.
There is.
And I've seen it played, actually, before. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Is Hero Quest a role-playing game or a board game?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's some arguments there.
That's gonna break your noodle, huh?
Yeah, there's some arguments there.
Real quick, the Mad Elf is asking in the live chat, says, "Is there a Savage Worlds version of Legend of the Five Rings?" I don't think there is.
There is. There was. I did see one.
There is. Okay.
It is. It was not the depth that when I was doing my Savage Seas, I came across it because someone was talking about it.
Okay.
And it's not well known. I think it's somebody's transition that they did.
Somebody's fan.
It's an informal.
Yeah. Okay.
But there's a lot of that out there. Even the Palladium one was informal before Rifts became Savage Rifts.
Yeah, Elder Scrolls had an informal translation out there as well.
But so there is one out there. But the one thing that I noted about it was it was more Savage Worlds. It was not. It was less faithful to a system change, which is kind of what I'm going to be doing with 7th Sea anyways.
Yeah.
So in that, it felt like it was a real game changer, for lack of a better term. And I think they could have done it different. There was a lot of people who said there in that comment thread that they were saying like, this doesn't feel like Legend of the Five Rings.
You know, I know we discussed this a little bit in the System Spotlight too, and Sean is bringing this up or Heatsink is bringing this up in the live chat too. There was a D&D 3.0 version of Legend of the Five Rings as well.
Yes.
And it had the exact same criticism from L5R fans at the time, where like, okay, you translated it over, and here are some D&D rules for it, but in translation now, it does not feel like Legend of the Five Rings, and that would be my big complaint with it. Like, I almost wouldn't want to play it in Savage Worlds because, like I mentioned earlier, like the rings, where they're these kind of esoteric concepts rather than tangible things like strength and dexterity. You know, your air ring is more about solving things through cunning, whereas your fire ring is solving things through passion and direct force. You know,
yeah,
it's like, or a void ring is like about solving things with logic.
Yeah,
you lose that feel.
Yeah, when
you translate it back into something like Savage Worlds, it does have tangible strength, vitality, agility,
Yeah, one of the things that Mad Elf was bringing up was Warhammer Fantasy and 40K have made the transition to TTRPG. They have.
Yeah.
But one of the things that had came up in that we talked about earlier was that anchor mechanic, and I saw someone take and do Warhammer Fantasy in Savage World, but they added an anchor mechanic, and the anchor mechanic, because they were using the effectively the Humans Terran style story, and they used faith and chaos as the scale. And you slide up or down, and as you slide up and gain more faith, you become more of your character. As you slip into chaos, you gain more power. So in one case, you're doing better for others, and in one case, you're doing better for yourself.
Right.
So once you slip too far, you lose your character. Either way.
I think it's great.
So I think those kinds of games, definitely the theme gives you that anchor, and I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anything else you want to discuss?
I don't think so. Do we know what our next show is? Or did we hit the end of the list?
I think we hit the end of the list. So
we've got a note jotted down here that says current inspirations for games that we're planning. And such like that, but I guess we'll figure that out. You can find us online at on Twitter at st_conclave, on Instagram at st_conclave. You can listen to us live every Wednesday night at on 7 p.m. Eastern Time on mixlr.com /storyteller-conclave, and join up on our Discord. Links up on our Twitter as well as our website storytellerconclave.com.
We'd like to thank our Patreon members and our listeners who come, but I will definitely list off our named members
so much, everybody, for joining us.
Please, thank you. Our Knox in the Box, Sam, the Arcane Asylum, Sparkle Motion, Veteran, and Hulavu, we really appreciate you helping us every month. We'd love to have more Patreons, but really, we'd love to have all of you on our Discord as well who listen. Our pre-show music is by Arcane Anthems. You can find that at patreon.com/arcaneanthems. I highly recommend you go there. He has lots of music. Our intro music is Beyond the Warriors by Geefrog. You can find that at geefrog.bandcamp.com or on Google Music. And our outro music, Only Our Footprints in the Sand, is by Mirror Machine. You can find that at freemusicarchive.org.
And a big shout out, as always, to our families, Vicky and Sean. Thank you so much for loving and supporting us.
Every
single one of our listeners, especially all of you who came to our live chat to make this a special,
special
show for us tonight. And all of our friends who've sat with us at our tables over the years, thank you so much. We love you all.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And have a safe and happy transition, and we will see you on the other side.
Good night.
Good night.